Welcome to the Pulse of Story podcast. My name is Derek Christopher. Now, if you ever wanted to know how stories are evaluated behind closed doors, this is the person that you want to listen to today. Spade Robinson, MFA from USC School of Cinematic Arts, which is the biggest and greatest film school in the world, founded the Atlanta Film Project, a global story consulting firm. She started her career curating projects and screenplays for the Sundance Institute and has consulted with the Sundance Institute, Film Independent, HBO, Disney, Fox Networks. What Spade is amazing at doing is getting into your stories because she consults with filmmakers and screenwriters around the world, thousands and thousands of people. She gets into the heart of your story and what will make it effective before it even hits the marketplace. Spade, was that a good introduction? Does that sort of
Yes, it was
define
the
everything?
best. Thank you.
Welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. You make me want to meet Spade Robinson.
You,
Where is he?
well, so here's my first question. So, what is something that the gatekeepers respond to in either a screenplay or a film instinctively, but they almost never articulate to either the writer or the filmmaker?
It's the intangible things like voice. I would say voice is something that will cause someone to fight for a project that's not ready. It's not formatted correctly. There are mistakes. I don't really think this is the best format. It will cost too much. It will cost too little. The filmmaker is too experienced. There's all of these reasons why not to pick this script, but the voice, the specificity of the voice, how unique the voice is, I feel like I've never read anything like this before. Not in terms of plot, but in terms of the authenticity of the voice. That is something that it's difficult to articulate to writers because you can't tell them how to build that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that makes people's scripts stand out.
So how do you, when you're consulting with somebody, how do you sort of dig into that to get somebody to reveal their emotions, reveal their true self because when you're just writing words on a page, it's so impersonal. So how do you infuse those words with your authentic self?
Honestly, it's working backwards. So when I start with something like structure, right, and
Yeah.
I sort of force you into this little container of what's the beginning, middle, and end of your movie, before you start writing, you really do have to make all of those hard creative decisions before you hit the page. And that's how I teach it. So because I'm forcing you to figure out what happens next, you have to ask yourself questions like, okay, is this the most compelling place for the plot to go? Why? I will look at something and say, okay, I think you can raise the stakes here. I think you're protecting your main character. I think you identify with them in a lot of ways and you're protecting them from harm. So why don't we pull the restraints off of that and figure out why you feel so protective of this character, right? And then we'll
Yeah.
get down to, well, I just feel as though they wouldn't do this thing. Okay, so you're not allowing your character has flaws. Why?
Yeah.
Well, it's
Right.
really important that, they be seen. Oh, is it really important to you that you be so there's no way to work with me without it being a therapy session. It just sort of happens. But in
Yeah.
order to get to the heart of the story, I have to figure out, pinpoint where you personally are holding back. And when we unleash that, then we can unleash the sort of restraints you need to take the story to the most compelling version.
So, how important is structure then? How important is what Sid Field used to teach, or Robert McKee, or John Truby? How important is structure, understanding structure first before you even get to sort of be, or does it sort of work in tandem to bring those emotions out of the characters?
I think structure is the most important, and I know that's kind of a boring answer. But
Yeah,
I
no, but that's a
do,
great answer though.
I think it's the most important because otherwise, think of it like juicing, right?
Yeah,
So there are, let's say I had a plate full of fruit, right? And these are
right.
all the different versions of the story it could be. But if I
Yeah,
tell you I'm not going to be able to accept a plate full of fruit, I'm going to need for your story to exist in this small mug. You have to figure out how to juice all of that and
right.
concentrate the most important parts and leave the things that don't matter. And so that's why I think picking a container for your story to live inside of, whether it's a feature or a series, if it's a pilot, if it's a half hour, if it's out, like when you pick that container, then you are up against a wall where I can press you even deeper.
Right. And then, so when you press deeper, how often do you get pushback from the writer that, I either they don't know how to let go, or they're trying they're trying to impress you with something that they think is good for the marketplace.
I get pushback, I would say maybe 30% of the time.
Yeah.
Um, Pushback usually comes from the most experienced of screenwriters. So I'm also the screenwriting the feature director for the Athena Screenwriting Lab. And
Wow.
so when I'm in that position, we're talking about writers that have gotten into a lab. A lot of times they've been in several labs, they've been staffed, or they have certain professional
Yeah.
credits. And so they're used to a process where they can replicate something really good because they're just really good writers.
Yeah.
But I know it can be better.
Yeah.
And so I'll get pushback about like what is this weird process where it all of a sudden became personal.
Yeah.
And I've made it this far in my career without having to go there. So who are
Right.
you to tell me that that's what needs to happen? And I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you right now. The script is good. You can take it out and it may get made. But if you want to
Yeah.
win an Emmy, you will listen to me.
Ah, okay.
Whatever you are holding back personally, and then it'll come down to something small. It doesn't have to be something bad. Like
Yeah.
it can be, this character doesn't feel worthy in a certain way, and
Yeah.
you have to be vulnerable enough to show how ugly that can look. And that
Yeah.
is when we're starting to, that's when I say, okay, now we're swimming.
Do in talking to people like Corey Mandel or Dara Marks, one thing that I'm hearing from you guys is that it's not just a matter of making your script great. It's really the writer learning how to fix and find the problems in their script, whether it's a new script or whatever it is, that the writer really needs to work on themselves to understand what their weak points are.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I call it self-curation. At some point, you should get to the
Yeah.
point where you should be able to reflect back to me or regurgitate back to me what's working and what's not working. And I think that's what continues to make a writer hireable. When you are vulnerable enough on a regular basis, when your ego is not attached to being perceived,
Yeah.
then you can replicate the process. And it's just emotional bravery. It's a muscle. You can build it and it can get stronger and stronger. And when you get to the point where you can self-curate, like I recently had experience. I'm writing a script and last night, I went to bed at 8 o'clock last night. I got to a
Yeah.
point where I was like, I don't want to, I don't want to go there. I don't want to tap into that because um
Tap into what?
tap into so I'm writing a script where there's two characters who make a suicide pact
Okay.
and one character makes it and the other character doesn't, and so there's this moment where one of the characters finds this letter and I have to figure out what the letter says.
Oh,
And as someone who I'm writing from a perspective of someone who has struggled with depression and all of these things, and so when I'm in a good place, it's hard for me to tap back into how dark and desperate and hopeless it can feel.
yeah.
Because then I have to say, okay, what's the mechanism to get myself out of this again? And so I don't ask anybody to do anything I'm not willing to do. I was not willing
Yeah.
to do last night. I went to bed and I just couldn't. And I woke up this morning and I was like, all right, time to pony up. And so that's what I did.
Well, do you think that there's a line that, as a writer, that you don't want to cross? That how much of yourself do you really want to put out there? And how much subconsciously are you battling with yourself? Like, I have the story I want to tell, but maybe I don't think it's commercial enough. Or do you even consider that? Should you even consider that?
Yes, you should. You 100% should.
Yeah.
And you can make the decision to reject that notion. I'm agnostic about whatever you decide to do with your career. You can say, I don't care about audiences at all.
Yeah.
I but that should be a sober, well-informed choice. I don't want you making that choice because you just don't understand how audiences work or you don't understand marketing. You decide to ignore it because you were lazy or you just want to focus on the part that was fun to you.
Yeah,
I'm not going to root for that. But if you say, I have an understanding, I've done the research, I studied the market, I get it, but it's not something I'm concerned with.
yeah,
Fair enough. So I do think writers should be thinking about that because we don't make art in a vacuum. We make it for somebody to catch. And to your point about like where is that line? I think everybody has to decide that for themselves. For me, I feel like when it comes to plot, that's the kind of data that I want to protect. So I wouldn't write something that I think plot-wise perfectly reflects my life. But
right.
when it comes to themes, um, even when it's hard, I I want to be a mirror to the human experience. Like that's why I write. And if I am in a place where I am having an experience that I believe at least one other person is having,
Yeah,
um, and it's rarely talked about, then it's something I want to talk about. If it, if I have the ability to make people feel less alone or create something where people would feel less alone, that's it's the highlight of my
yeah.
work.
So, you talk about themes. So, what should a writer do if I have a story that I want to tell? And let's say I haven't even written a word yet. What would you say is the best process to get that story on paper and start developing a script?
Another boring answer, I would say outline.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Um, I don't do anything without an outline. I usually do a story statement first. So a story statement is just a sentence. It's a question that I believe every good story asks, which is, this is a story about this person who wants something badly. Will they get the thing that they want? Or will something internal be too difficult, be a bigger
Is it kind
mountain?
of a log line?
It's sort of less of a lot line because it's nobody ever sees it but you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's sort of in that family.
Okay,
But what it does is I have, blank spaces for where the character's name goes, the thing that they want, the tangible thing that they want, and then the internal obstacle. Because when we're choosing plots, a lot of times we think about external obstacles, like the alcoholic grandmother or the comet that's coming for Earth or the,
yeah,
cop that won't leave you alone. But in reality, and this is like in reality for our lives as human beings, what we're really battling is an internal thing, right? So if
yeah,
a comet is coming to Earth, that's not really my big obstacle. My big obstacle may be my arrogance because I didn't study the science. I just want to be a cowboy and go out there and handle it the way I usually handle things or whatever.
right.
So usually a story is overcoming that internal thing to address that bigger obstacle. And so I have people figure out the core of that story in that one sentence first. Everything that happens is in that one sentence. And
Yeah,
then it's very discriminatory. So as you're going through writing, you need to ask yourself, okay, I like this scene, I like this idea, I love this joke, right? But does it fall in line with the story I'm telling? Right? And that's the
yeah.
bar that you need to meet when you're making these creative decisions. And I think that's what makes your writing process more efficient because it can't go anywhere. You decided from the beginning
Yeah.
what the story was about.
Well, when you're at Sundance, you're curating projects. What is something that people may be surprised to learn that you're looking for? Or what's the one big aha thing that people don't understand that like a Sundance Institute does?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you two things.
Yeah.
Because one thing is that in an institute like that or any of the other sort of nonprofit artist organizations, um, you're looking for artists that are ready for the program that you have developed.
Okay.
And it's easy to feel rejected when you don't get into a program if you don't
Right.
understand what the other side is thinking of.
Yeah.
So with all things being equal, and you've made it to like the interview round or you've made it to like the final round of any of them, for profit,
Yeah.
nonprofit, Um, your script is good enough. Your script is good enough. Your script is good enough to get in. And the only thing that's keeping it from getting in is the fact that I have to curate a cohort of people, eight or six or four or one or who, however, that fit together. So that's one thing, right? That it's not your work at that point. Your
Well,
work is
let me ask you. Sorry. So those 6 to 8 people, what are they doing on that project? How does that all fit together? What do they do?
Well, it depends on the program, right? So if it's a fellowship, that's different. As I said, let's say if there's like a year-long fellowship, that's
Yeah.
different than something that's like a 2-week mentorship. Is different than like a lab. A lab usually is like focused exactly on the work of the page. So you'll probably have an advisor who's reading your script, giving you notes, you're turning it back in, something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas something like a fellowship, you are maybe taking some kind of lecture on Zoom, then you are going in to take a tour of the place and meet with the executives and shake their hand and get a mentor, and they like send out, a few emails on your behalf to try to get you meetings. So
Okay.
depending on how things are designed,
Yeah.
the cohort is doing something different. But to your point of like what's happening inside of these programs, that's my
Yeah.
second point, which is every organization has certain programming that's built to address like this much of your career, right? Not
Yeah.
the whole thing, this much. So,
Yeah.
for example, if I am Athena, I'm looking to address writers to move the script forward, not necessarily the career forward, the script forward. And I'm looking for writers at a like, if this is the breadth of your career, I'm looking for writers right here. And we're looking
Yeah.
at earlier stage writers who are ready to move to the next level but haven't gotten the opportunity. So what I think not enough organizations communicate effectively is that here is exactly what's going to happen, and this is the exact career stage that
Yeah.
is best suited to get the most out of the program, because I can't support everybody, right? So but I do this one thing really well, which is mentorship or whatever, right? If I do
Yeah.
mentorship really well, then I'm not looking for writers who are like further along because they don't need it, and I'm not looking for writers who are super early because they're not going to be able to fully take advantage of it because they don't have the canon of projects, they don't have the experience, they don't have the language, and so mentorship is not going to help them a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
This is just out of my own curiosity. What kind of stats, like the Sundance Institute, what percentage of submissions are men or women, are from different cultures, different ethnicities? I mean, do you guys really pay attention to that? And is that important? Or does it really come down to just how good the script and the project is?
Okay, so haven't been there for some years,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of different organizations think the same way. So this could apply to multiple places.
Yeah.
From my experiences working at that particular organization, they cared very much about supporting a diverse range of audiences when it
Right.
comes to like career stage, when it comes to the age of the filmmaker, when it comes to ethnicity, background, part of the world, all of that. So there's all of these different ways that they want to sort of make sure that the
Yeah.
work that they were supporting reflected the world we live in. Um, with that said, just because you're collecting that information doesn't mean that your top projects are all going to um, have the same makeup of everything you wish you were supporting, right?
Right.
So, for example, from the perspective of the documentary film program, we would track like information. If you filled it out, you don't have to fill it out, but if you filled it out, we would sort of hold ourselves accountable to like how well we were faring. But it's
Yeah.
not as though there's like a quota. It is
Right.
it is more like, okay, we're really not doing well in older filmmakers. We're really not doing well with this part of the world or whatever. So then as opposed to like moving how we support, we would do more things like outreach and workshops and education to make sure we're pulling this group or this demographic or set of people into a place where they're more competitive in a process like ours.
Yeah. And how important do you think like screenplay contests are? What's the value of like a screenplay contest versus a lab versus like an incubator versus a fellowship? I mean, where how would you sort of rank them as far as where writers should look to go?
So it's interesting because I think almost all of them can change your career overnight, and
Yeah,
almost all of them could also not do that. You could do like six of them and be like, ah.
yeah,
Um, I think of them less as like a pecking order and more about where you are in your career and where they're best suited.
yeah,
So something like a lab is great because usually the point is to take you away from your life so you can laser focus on something.
yeah,
And usually you're in a place where it's almost on the brink of being produced and it needs to be sweetened, tightened, whatever. And
right,
a lot of times that can come along with like press or getting articles written about who's in this cohort so you get more attention on your project and can move it forward.
yeah,
Something like a fellowship is usually a much longer time where a lab may be like 4 days, a fellowship may be a year. And I think that's really well suited for writers who are earlier in their career and sort of need all the different types of programming that a fellowship should provide. So a fellowship usually has some kind of mentorship component. It usually has some kind of
yeah,
education component. It usually has some kind of mixer component where they make sure that you like create relationships in your cohort with each other. And there's usually something in the end where like you may pitch, but maybe not pitch to like get something made, pitch to like get notes back, or over the course of the fellowship you wrote something and now you're getting feedback. Um, so I think that's earlier, and then I think labs is sort of after that. I think
yeah,
programs that are purely mentorship are best suited for writers who have the breadth of that kind of experience or understanding under their belt, and now they sort of need more career trajectory, like help. Let me help you move on this way across the board because you are ready. And I know wherever I send you, you're gonna kill it. Um,
yeah.
and then I would say along the same place where mentorships are, maybe like right here, or sort of in this space is where I
Yeah,
would put screenwriting contest.
yeah.
I think screenwriting contests are one of the most democratic ways that writers can get attention,
Oh,
particularly like if you are not in a city where there is a long-standing film tradition. Um,
right.
it's a lot more difficult to make those connections and create those relationships and all of that. And so something like a screenwriting contest, you win Nichols, you win Blue Cat. I mean, there's automatic press that comes along with that. And there is such a stamp of approval on your work that it should open doors for you to have conversations about where you go next.
So do you think that it really gets attention? Like if you're submitting a query letter to somebody and you say, "Oh, I won, the Nichols competition," that carries some weight then.
It does. The thing about query letters is that um, if you
I
do get
love
a
this.
response,
Yeah, no, go. I love that you're digging deep because I think this is the stuff that people don't know.
I mean, if you do get a response, which I hope you do, they are sometimes rare. But it can also take a very long time because something as
Right.
wide open as anybody can email this person, you're talking about not just onslaught of emails, but you're talking about onslaught of like scripts. So if I see a log line, because you should never be sending a script in a query letter. So if I see your
Yeah,
log line and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, and it's a part of my mandate, then I may ask you to read the script. Now, by the time
yeah,
I get to your email, is it 6 months later? Maybe,
yeah,
right? So yes, I think that would perk people's interest. But I think if you have a situation, first of all, ideally you're in Hollywood Reporter or something like that if you are winning contests that are that prestigious.
yeah,
But even for, ones that are up there, ones that are sort of in the same zeitgeist or whatever,
yeah,
I do think if you have a warmer contact, it's easier to make that pack a bigger punch because it's harder for it to get missed.
yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say is the biggest misunderstanding that writers have about certain stories that are championed in labs and festivals versus those that just sort of disappear and that aren't championed? What is it about those stories that speak out?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you this, and this just is the math in my experience.
Yeah,
80% of everything I read is terrible.
yeah. I'm surprised it's even that low.
I would say 80% is terrible.
Okay.
10% is pretty good.
Okay.
5% is really good. And then 5% is great, amazing, superior.
Yeah,
So if you're in that top 20%, it's a lot less competitive than it looks.
yeah,
And if you're that top 10%, we pretty much have seen your name, right? Like I would have
yeah,
seen your name apply to some things. Even if I couldn't get you into a program,
yeah,
I've seen your name. I may have argued for you. But I think when you're, especially in that top 5%, if you're not getting in, it has nothing to do with how amazing the script is.
yeah.
It has to do with the fact that I already have two dramas in this cohort. I'm not putting three dramas in there, right? That doesn't,
Right.
I need at least one comedy. I need a horror. I need so it has a lot more to do with like how I have to organize a group and put them
Okay.
together.
Yeah,
Because I not only want to make sure that like different genres are represented, I also want to make sure like different levels of experience
yeah,
are represented. So if I have a really experienced writer and I'm putting them in a cohort with someone who's just starting out, but they're fantastic, and
yeah,
then I'm putting together a relationship kind of, or that I feel like these group of people can support each other.
yeah.
Um, so I guess what I would say that most people don't understand is twofold. One, after you make that sort of when you're in that last 10% where you're constantly in a finalist, semifinalist interview round for every single thing, it's not you. It's just not you.
Yeah,
It's the logistics of what programs have to do.
yeah.
Um, Now, if you aren't even making it there, to me, it is the best reflection back to you that the work isn't ready.
Okay.
And I think because I mean they've gotten a lot more expensive over the years, but the ones that you don't have to pay for, if you can get early deadlines and stuff like that, and just apply to a bunch of things, you don't always get feedback, unfortunately. Blue Cat does give you feedback though, and it's pretty
Yeah,
good feedback. Um, But that's the kind of feedback that you need. That's the data you need to be like, okay, I'm not even poking the semifinalists. Let me go back to the lab and figure out, okay, where am I falling short? And usually, where people are falling short has to do with their control over tone and genre
okay.
and their storytelling chops in terms of like nuance and subtext and things that make writing more sophisticated. So you can
Yeah.
have a plot that's interesting. There's a clear beginning, middle, and end, and it's technically well put together. I can't tell you how many times I've been reading a script and I write in my notes, well written, competent, right?
Yeah.
Like hundreds of those, like well written, competent,
It's
like
not enough.
it just doesn't stand out, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was a funny joke, right? By the way, for comedy writers, it is so much harder to write comedy
Yeah.
because making somebody who's reading it laugh out loud in a open call where I have 500 scripts to read and they're all comedies,
Yeah.
maybe four will make me laugh out loud.
Wow. Well, but is that a function though that I think because what is acceptable in comedy changes over the years? Like, could you make a Blazing Saddles today? Could you make a Tropic Thunder today?
I don't know if you could make a Thunder today. But I think when it comes to comedy, it's about like rhythm and it's
Yeah,
about like honesty.
yeah.
So whenever I read something that I know this is supposed to be funny, I'll be like, oh, that's ironic. Oh yeah, that's a good observation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. But what makes me laugh out loud is rhythm. Like, so it has more to do with like a joke being unexpected. It has more to do with it being on the back of something else. So you're surprising me. It has more to do with like the earnest, like what's earnest about it. So if the
Yeah,
characters are like trying to be funny or they're I can tell that you're writing from a place of I'm writing a comedy, so I have to like put these bits in.
yeah,
What makes, in my opinion, a comedy great are people who are doing things in earnest and it's just funny. Is it funny because they're unaware,
yeah,
of all of the rules of the world that you put them in? And so you put, there's a juxtaposition between what they understand and what the rest of the world of the show understands.
yeah,
Um, but ultimately, there's a certain vulnerability that you have to sort of strip away your ego to write comedy really well. I
yeah,
always point people back to how earnest the main character was in The Office, and that's what makes it that funny. And I think when we allow characters to have as much dimension as we really have when we're like naked and unashamed and vulnerable,
yeah.
um, we are tragically hilarious. And I think the scripts could use more of that.
What do you think are the toughest genres to write? I mean, what do you see as the most difficult genres to sort of try to get into?
Comedy for sure.
Comedy, yeah, definitely.
Um, I think right now it's difficult to because everyone is talking about hope core and that being where the industry is going to put a lot of attention or what's going to be very popular.
Wait, I'm
Um,
sorry, what is it?
Hope core,
Hope core.
right? So just like more hopeful stories.
Hopeful. Well,
Um,
okay.
So in that, there has to be a way to also meet audiences where they are. So if we're coming from a long tradition of romantic comedies and hope core and sort of these swell of positive feelings type tones,
Yeah,
um, we've sort of graduated narratively away from things that don't feel believable or don't feel earned or feel too convenient. And
yeah,
audiences have gone through the, dark valley of the anti-hero and complex stories and living in this world. And I think Hope Core is going to have a certain kind of sophistication to it. And I think that's going to be difficult because, you have only so many pages to figure out how to do that. But
yeah.
I think whoever figures that out is going to do very well.
So, I mean, can hope core, is it not so much a genre, is it something that you could apply in the different genres? I'm trying to figure out what
Yeah,
exactly hope
so
core.
I think it'll be difficult for there can be like a happy ending in a horror film, but I think it'll be difficult tonally for that to
Yeah,
be hope core, like action adventure. I think can have like a kind of like fun camaraderie. Let's all do this together and like take down these, you know, uh,
yeah,
I was gonna say aliens, but I guess I would say like zombies or something because um aliens has gotten a whole different name these days. But
yeah.
um yeah, I think it those kind of like sweeter tones, hopeful stories, I think will come back. I think there's a desire to escape. I mean, escapism has always been a huge part of like how the entertainment industry thrives. And a lot of times
Right.
we've been able to escape by going into something that's like otherworldly or a little bit darker than the world we live in. And we can play in that and still feel safe. And I think people are going to want to escape into something that is more upbeat.
Do you think that's just a function of what the world is like today? That everyone seems to have gone mad, and so people are just looking for anything that they can sort of escape into, some sort of hope.
Yes, I think that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Like I heard somebody say a long time ago that we wouldn't have been able to make Scandal today.
Right.
Um, and it was fun to look behind the scenes and kind of see corruption and be like, ooh, and it's
But now we're
sexy,
living it every day.
right? It's not sexy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you see storytelling different in TV versus film, or is there a big difference?
This is a hard question, sir.
Yeah.
Um, there is so much going on when it comes to format. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Um, what I'll say is that there's multiple things that are changing when it
Yeah.
comes to TV and film. Um, Streaming has changed things a lot.
Yeah.
And the desire to kind of feel that feeling in the theater is different, not because it's less magical, but because it titillates us in a way where we have the opportunity to be titillated in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And so I think what has kind of blended is the prestige of film has blended over to television in a way that
Right.
feels like there's a little bit of an even playing field when it comes to that sort of intangible idea of the silver
Yeah.
screen versus the big screen. Um, when it comes to what is episodic, though, we can't have the conversation without also talking about verticals. And so I think that as verticals have entered the chat, we are revisiting the soap, which we supposedly left behind. Remember when
Yeah.
soap that had been on for like hundreds of years were being canceled? And you're like,
Yeah.
how do you cancel a soap? I like this is my grandmother's favorite show. How is that
Yeah.
possible? Um, and
Yeah.
so
I
we
remember
are supposedly, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
when I was a kid, I always remember we used to have to get home by noon so my mom could watch all my children.
Watch her stories, yeah.
It's like, yeah, she just had to be there to watch it.
And it's interesting because we sort of have come out of that time and now we're sort of going back into it with verticals.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of also flipping around to where people are wanting to see their favorite influencers and movies and TV shows, feature films, etc. So
Yeah.
there's this ecosystem that almost feels a little bit jumbled up, but I know that there's like an entity that feels like it wants to like hold ranks to how things used to go.
Yeah.
So the wonderful thing about TV is that there is still money there. Shows are still being bought and sold. And
Yeah.
that I see that increasing as we've come out of the strikes. It was very dark and it is still very hard, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm seeing more buying and selling on the TV side. When it comes to
Yeah.
features, it really depends on the budget level because there are certain budget levels that are harder to get made.
Yeah.
Um, and it just feels like fewer categories of budget levels are being funded right now.
Yeah. Do you ever have, if somebody's developing an idea for a script, do you ever recommend that if they had an idea to do a TV script, you say, that would make a better feature? Or if they have an idea for a feature, do you think that would make better for a TV script? Do you ever
All the
sort of
time,
get into that realm?
all the time, all the
Yeah.
time. So, it's interesting because right now on my TikTok, I have a calendar, like a 10-week calendar for writing a feature screenplay.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm following along with it on my TikTok right now. And the first week is all about premise. And the reason why I go over that first is because sometimes we assume like we are married to the format first before we
Yeah.
figure out if the story is best fit for that format. So let's
Yeah.
look over the premise and make sure this premise makes sense for something that has a clear ending that is going to be satisfying, both inevitable and surprising, but that's what makes an ending satisfying. So, I I do often find people who've already gone through the process of writing the script, and you're like, so I'm sorry you did all that work. Um, but this story would be better suited in this kind of container. And the truth is, every story isn't always going to be in a visual container. So
Right.
sometimes I'll read a treatment or a one sheet or something, and I'm like, this is an article. The best
Oh,
format for this story is an article. This belongs in a history book. This is an anthology. This is
wow.
inherently visual and therefore it should be on a screen.
Yeah.
And because of the rhythm of the storytelling and the so remember in social studies where they used to have like they used to have like this line, they'd be like timelines. They have those
Yeah.
lines that tell us like this is a Revolutionary War in night whatever it happened, right?
Yeah.
So well, you want to think of a story the same way. Your characters, whether fiction or nonfiction, have these long lives. Let's say everybody lives to 100. What slice of their lives are you telling? Right? And
Yeah.
so, depending on the slice and the scope, that should tell you kind of what format the story is most appropriate for. And ideally, you make those decisions before you get started.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go to some quick things. Like, what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about character and character development?
Ooh, I would say that people think when they write a story, that's character development. I
Yeah.
think what's probably more important about a character that's actually going to end up on the page and reflect to me that you developed the character has more to do with their language and how they interact with like other people in conflicts. So that can be a part of like backstory, but even if you've done all of that work, that doesn't necessarily translate to what ends up on the page. But when you have decided what a character's communication style is
Yeah.
and what they bump up against internally, that's more character development work than all of the rest of that to me.
And is that important to then developing dialogue for your characters too, that they sound like they're actually separate characters?
Yes, yes. So I ask everyone to have what I call a character dialect. And so a
Oh,
character dialect is just how your character chooses to communicate based off of their nature nurture cocktail. So let's say if Bob is a character who is a strong silent type and he is very to the point, and then you put Bob in a conversation with Mary, who is very concerned about what people think about her, and so she will say everything but the thing. That conversation is interesting to watch because now you have this communication style dealing with this communication style and watching them talk around each other is very interesting. That's how you
yeah.
create the dynamics, the nuance, and the subtext that you're looking for.
Wow. And then what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that let's say they come to you and they want to do a consultation, they want you to do a script consultation, and they say, Spade, what is it that I need to know about my script and my story before I take it to the marketplace? Is there something as far as personal advice goes?
Yes, I think if you're in a place where you're taking it to the marketplace, the best thing is to know what your non-negotiables are and what your negotiables are so that you're having fruitful conversations with potential partners, buyers, and all that kind of
Oh,
stuff. So the more you know your story, you know what will break it and you know what
yeah.
will support it. Even if you don't like it, you know story-wise what will support it. And that will help you to have the kind of relationships that you want to produce something.
And do you think sometimes that you need to be able to accept the fact that maybe your story is not going to sell and you need to move on to the next one? And how do you tell a writer that?
First of all, you should be working on more than one thing at a time.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
So you should have something at all the different stages. You should have something that you're brainstorming on and you're taking notes in your notes app. You should have something that you're probably outlining, right?
Yeah.
And about to move into active writing. That goes back and forth. And then something you're tightening and sweetening. And then something that you're already pitching. And that just helps you to be, of course, less precious about each project. Um, and it gives you a little more flexibility to understand, okay, if I'm not willing to put this down, if I'm not, I just can't. I can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't do it. Then you need to figure out maybe if there's a better format for it that can help you move it forward.
Spade, I want to write a script just so I could work with you because I think you've got such great advice. It's such meaningful advice, and you've got such a positivity to you that I absolutely love.
Thank
So,
you.
what is the best way for people to get a hold of you? I know you mentioned your TikTok. Let's put your TikTok on screen.
Yes.
What's your TikTok?
So it's at Atlanta Film Project on TikTok. I'm
Okay.
at Atlanta Film Project on both on TikTok and Instagram.
Okay. And is that the best way to reach you then?
Yes, it's the best way to say, I have a question. Can you make a video about this real quick? But if you want to get a one-on-one session with me, you can book time on my calendar at atlantafilmproject.com.
Fantastic. Spade, thank you so much. This has been incredible. It's been such a pleasure. Do you have any final parting words?
Yes, first, thank you for having me. This is so much fun. I love to geek out.
Yeah,
And second, the level of patience that you need to have for your career is more than you think. So take the pressure off of yourself and learn how to live a full life, and it will make you a better writer. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but I promise the peace will help you become a better writer.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Spade. For the Pulse of Story, I am Derek Christopher. This was Spade Robinson, and we will see you next time.